Hey, let's talk about site capacity and when you are beyond capacity. I'm Dr. Jeff Kingsley. Welcome to another edition of Riding in Cars with Researchers. I did a video recently about how to choose which trials to do. And it put it into 3 buckets. How you pick whether or not you should say yes to a research trial. But what happens when you trigger one of those buckets that says you should say yes, and yet you need to say no for a different reason? A friend of mine reached out to me after she watched that video, and this was actually her idea. She said, what about site capacity? Where it's a great trial and you should do it for the business development reason or the business reason or the betterment of mankind, but you don't have enough capacity. And I said, you're exactly right. Let's do a piece on that. So what is site capacity? There's people capacity, there's site capacity. They largely overlap, but not completely. Capacity falls into lots of realms. Frankly, you never have enough time, enough money, enough people. Sometimes you don't have enough what we many times call bandwidth, mental capacity, to be able to do something. You're just pulled in too many different directions at the same time. So you can get a trial that you want to say yes to, and yet you should say no because your site, your people, your business is out of capacity. How do you measure that? Well, you should be measuring it all the time. In my opinion, most sites fail to measure this. In my opinion, this is a major driver of site performance. It is a major driver of site failures. And sites aren't measuring it well enough so that they don't know when overcapacity issues are driving turnover issues with their coordinators. Overcapacity issues can actually reduce performance on trials. Like literally. Imagine a very simple diagram. 2 axes, X and Y, and you've got, let's talk about it as horizontal and vertical, okay? On your vertical axis, you've got your efficacy, your performance, how well you're doing. And on the horizontal axis, you've got your stress level. What you will find is roughly a bell-shaped curve where in the lower left-hand corner, you have no stress and you're actually very ineffective. There's no stress, there's no motivation, there's nothing going on. It's the realm of nothingness. As your stress begins to increase, your efficacy is going up, your performance is going up. And then there's a peak. That's the ideal zone. There's a peak where the stress is perfect. It's exactly the right motivation. It's the right stimulus. And you're at peak performance. When stress goes beyond that, performance goes down. You're overstressed, and in fact, you're getting less done. You're enrolling fewer patients. You're making more errors. You're more disengaged. The more stressed you become as a person, the greater the turnover. You start looking for a job elsewhere. As a site, you see your coordinator turnover going up. And in fact, trust me, if you give a coordinator too many trials, they end up on that right-hand side of that stress response curve. And in fact, you're doing worse on all those trials than if that coordinator had fewer trials. You have more trials, but you're actually putting in fewer total patients. You're making less revenue than you would have otherwise. You would have been better off being in that sweet spot on the stress response curve. It's something that sites need to measure on the individual basis, the individual team member, and on your site. Now, how is it any different at the site level? Well, you're measuring it at the individual coordinator level, and so that's giving you a sense of, does my site have excess capacity from a human standpoint? Do my team members have capacity to take on this great trial that falls into one of those 3 buckets in my last video, and I want to say yes to this trial? Do I have human capacity? Maybe you need to add people to do this next great trial. Does your site have the finances to hire those people in a timely fashion? Can you afford the increase in payroll? Because the increase in payroll is going to happen immediately. The increase in your cash flow is going to be delayed by several months. Do you have the time to take it on? You might have the human capacity to do it and the financial capacity, but your HR department doesn't have the time to onboard the people necessary to do this maybe large cohort vaccine trial, whatever the case may be. Or it could be that you don't have the bandwidth or the intellectual capacity. Let's say you've never done a sick patient phase 1 trial. Well, a sick patient phase 1 trial is very different from a healthy volunteer study. We've done inpatient bacteremia phase 1. So you're taking people who are being admitted to the hospital because they have bacteria floating around in their bloodstream. They're at risk of digging holes in their heart valves from staph. They're maybe in the ICU. Maybe they're on the floor. They're in need of IV antibiotics. And simultaneously, you're talking to them about the possibility of a first-in-human phase 1 research trial. That's a much more daunting type of study. Maybe you don't have the intellectual capacity yet or bandwidth yet to be able to do that trial. So maybe it's a super cool trial and it falls into one of your 3 buckets. Maybe it falls into the bucket of, it's a sponsor I don't have a great relationship with and I want to say yes to develop a relationship with this sponsor. Maybe it falls into the bucket of, it's for the betterment of mankind. I should support this trial. But you should say no because your company, your site, does not have the intellectual bandwidth, the experience to say yes to that trial yet. So there are reasons why you should say no, even when a potential opportunity falls into one of my 3 buckets to say yes. We will post the link to that previous podcast or whatever medium you watched it on so that you can reference that as well. Greatly appreciate the dialogue. I love that my friend reached out to me and prompted this question. Fantastic addition to the conversation. Continue to do so. Thank you for riding along with me. Take care.